Brothers and sisters, people of Africa, people of the world, I stand before you not to speak in riddles, or to hide behind the fragile curtain of diplomacy, but to speak with the clarity of a man who has seen truth written in the blood and dust of his continent. Today, they tell us there is a plan wrapped in the golden language of peace, adorned with promises of prosperity, endorsed by powerful hands. They tell us this plan, presented by the former American President Donald Trump, is the deal of the century, a blueprint for peace in Gaza, in Palestine, in the Middle East. But when we peel back its glittering surface, when we tear away the expensive packaging and look into its core, what do we find? We find domination disguised as diplomacy. We find humiliation dressed in the garments of reconciliation. We find chains presented as bracelets of gold. And I tell you here, before all nations, this is not peace. This is submission refined, rebranded, and resold to the world as progress. Peace is not when the powerful dictate every line, and the oppressed are asked only to sign. Peace is not when the suffering of a people is reduced to a currency for investors. Peace is not when the rights of the weak are buried beneath the applause of the strong. True peace is not the silence of the oppressed, it is the justice that gives them back their voice. When Trump unveiled his so-called peace plan, the world's cameras flashed, journalists clapped, and leaders in suits nodded in polite approval. They called it bold, they called it pragmatic, they called it visionary. But my brothers and sisters, a poisoned cup remains poisoned, no matter how crystal the glass. A rotten fruit cannot feed the hungry, no matter how sweet it smells. I ask again, what kind of peace is this where the occupier still keeps his boot pressed on the chest of the land? What kind of peace is this where walls still divide families, where checkpoints decide the rhythm of daily life, where a mother cannot reach a hospital because a soldier with a rifle says no? What kind of peace is this where children grow up under the shadow of drones instead of open skies? They call this peace, but it is the quiet of despair. It is the silence that comes when hope is strangled. It is the peace of graves, not the peace of freedom. And yet they say, be grateful, this is progress. But how can a man be grateful when his home is stolen and he is offered a corner of it as mercy? How can a nation be grateful when its future is signed away by hands that do not belong to it? They call it negotiation, but there was no negotiation, there was dictation. There was the empire's arrogance returning, the same old story of the powerful deciding for the powerless, the conqueror speaking for the conquered, the thief writing the laws of property. They call it the deal of the century. But I ask you, whose century? Whose deal? Is it the century of the oppressed, who have lived under siege for generations, whose children are born into exile, whose elders die with the keys to stolen homes still tied around their necks? Is it the century of the farmer, whose olive trees are burned by settlers and soldiers alike, whose soil remembers every footprint of those who came uninvited? Is it the century of the grandmother, who still dreams of walking through the doors of her own home, the one she was forced to leave when the world looked away? No, it is not their century. This deal was never written for them. It was written for the powerful, for the occupier who wishes to wash away his crimes without returning what he stole. It was written for the politicians who fly in private jets while children sleep in the ruins of bombed homes. It was written for the hands that build walls, not for those who live behind them. This is not the peace of equals. This is the peace of the jailer locking the door and calling it security. This is the peace of the empire tightening its grip and calling it order. They dare to tell the world that this is justice. But I say to you, justice cannot be born from theft, nor can peace grow from humiliation. They say this plan will bring development, that billions will flow into Gaza and the West Bank, that prosperity will bloom. But I am from Africa, and I have seen this movie before. They came to us too with promises of development, with speeches of partnership, with deals signed in shining rooms. They said, "Give us your minerals, your oil, your gold, your land. Let us decide your policies. Let us write your laws. Let us build your roads." And when we agreed, what did we receive? We received poverty. We received division. We received leaders bought and sold. Our resources left our soil, and our people remained poor. The same lie, now told to another people. They tell Gaza, "Give up your sovereignty. Give up your claim to Jerusalem. Give up your right to freedom, and in return, we will build you factories." But a people cannot eat dignity. True, but a people cannot live without it either. A nation without dignity is a nation already buried. They offer the illusion of statehood, a state without borders, without an army, without control over its sky or sea. A flag to wave, but no freedom to defend. Is that a state, or is it a prison with a national anthem? They call it sovereignty, but it is occupation with a new name. They call it compromise, but it is confiscation. They call it realism, but it is the realism of empire, the realism that says might makes right. It is the same realism that built colonies, that drew lines on African soil without asking Africans, that called it civilization while chaining us in our own lands. It is the realism of the master telling the servant to be grateful for crumbs. It is the realism of those who destroy and then demand applause for offering a bandage. But let me tell you, maps drawn in arrogance are drawn in sand. The tides of justice will wash them away. You can sign papers, make speeches, pass resolutions, but no law can make theft legitimate. No flag can sanctify injustice. You cannot turn a crime into policy and expect history to forget. They call it the deal of the century, but I call it the betrayal of the century. This deal does not end conflict, it buries it alive. It buries it beneath billions of dollars, beneath words like security and realism, beneath the applause of those who profit from pain. But the truth remains. You can cover it, but it does not die. And when you build a peace upon lies, it will collapse, because lies have no roots. The truth of Palestine, like the truth of Africa, cannot be erased. You cannot exile truth. You cannot bomb it. You cannot imprison it. They have tried before. They tried with Lumumba. They tried with Sankara. They tried with Mandela. They tried with Gaddafi. They will try again. But every time they bury one voice, 1,000 rise. Because truth, like the sun, always returns. They think they are offering peace, but what they are offering is the stillness before a storm. They think they can end resistance with money, but money cannot buy dignity. They think they can erase history with maps, but history is written in the hearts of people who refuse to forget. They think they can silence the call for justice, but even in silence, the oppressed breathe defiance. I say to the world, peace cannot come from Washington offices. Peace cannot be dictated through microphones. Peace must be grown from the soil of justice, watered by equality, nurtured by respect. It cannot be imported, cannot be bought, cannot be imposed. It must be built by those who suffer, by those who live the pain of occupation, by those whose lives have been stolen yet whose spirits remain unbroken. And so I say to my brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, across the world, do not despair. For every plan they make to erase you, God writes another to preserve you. For every wall they build, time will bring it down. For every lie they tell, truth will rise again. They call this plan peace, but we call it surrender. They call it progress, but we call it betrayal. They call it a vision, but we call it blindness. Africa knows this pain. We know the voice that demands we surrender in the name of progress. We know the promises that never come true. We know the treaties that enslave. And so we stand with Palestine, not in charity, but in solidarity, because our stories are one. Our oppressors wore different faces, but their methods were the same. They came with smiles and chains. They came with money and maps. They came with promises of civilization and left us bleeding. But we rose, and so will they. Because freedom is not a gift. It is a birthright. It is not granted by empires. It is claimed by the brave. And I say this today to the United Nations, to the West, to those who write the scripts of domination and call them peace. You cannot silence a people who have decided to stand. You cannot erase a history that refuses to forget. You cannot chain a spirit that knows its worth. This so-called deal, this illusion of peace, will not endure, because it is built upon lies, because it denies dignity, because it rejects justice. And peace without justice is not peace at all. It is slavery given a new name. The world may clap now, but history will not. The cameras may praise today, but tomorrow they will record collapse. And when that day comes, when this illusion crumbles, remember these words. You cannot negotiate freedom. You can only recognize it. You cannot buy justice. You can only uphold it. And you cannot build peace upon injustice and expect it to last. That is the lesson of Africa. That is the warning of history. And that is my message to the world.